Hello and welcome to.
Please clarify.
I'm Kalen
And I'm Emily.
and we're your hosts.
Welcome back. We're glad you
Yes,
came back.
welcome back. We're so glad you're here with us.
Yes. Or if you're
Yeah,
new, it's nice to meet you.
we love new people.
We do. We do.
My gosh.
Well, it's really nice to be here with you today, Kalen.
How are you doing? What's going on with you?
I am doing actually okay. I hate that sounds surprising. But I feel pretty good. I have been, as you know, Kaylin, but I have been waking up a little bit earlier and going to sleep earlier, and I found that that's actually been helping me a lot in just my mood and the days feeling a little bit longer and not doing as much late night doom scrolling as I was doing before. So
Yep.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, but
Mhm,
how
mhm.
are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I am good. I just started a new job the week before last. Enjoying it. Everyone is very nice. I was telling Emily, everyone is very smart. Everyone is on top of their work, and that is just very, I think, surprising,
Yes,
based
unfortunately.
on exactly the experiences that Emily and I have had, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode. But feeling good, like a nice work-life balance, things of that
Okay,
nature. So I'm definitely excited.
good. I'm really glad to hear that.
I feel like good
Oh,
about this. I don't know if I've ever felt this good about a job.
yeah. It's again, unfortunately, it yeah, that resonates with me a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm excited for you.
Our riches are coming too. I keep telling myself every day,
Yes,
the
our riches
wealth,
are
the
coming.
money is coming.
It's coming. Yeah.
Yes.
Today on episode 2, we're going to talk a little bit more about work and career. These were topics that we started to touch on in our first intro episode because, again,
Mhm.
both of these things are really relevant to Kaylin and I because it's partly how we met and became friends. So, in this episode, at least, we're kind of going to take it in 3 parts. The first is going to touch on our past work experiences a little bit. And we're going to talk about our education background as well, briefly, just because it kind of relates to this. And then part 2 is going to be more about the present and what we are currently doing and what we've been doing since we graduated undergrad.
I love that. I love that. So to kick it off, talking a little bit about kind of where we came from and our educational background. Emily and I, again, we met right after college. And so there
Yes.
were 4 years of our time in Boston together where we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know each other existed.
Mm-hmm.
So sad.
Yes.
What were you up to during those 4 years?
Mhm. Honestly, undergrad really feels, I don't want to say like a blur. And this is not because I was drinking all the time or partying or
It
anything, but
does feel like a
I
blur.
truly, yeah, when I think back to it, I can remember certain moments in each year, but collectively, I couldn't really tell you. Like I could tell you mainly the jobs that I worked, a few classes I took, people that I met, but outside of that, I don't know. I think my undergrad experience at least was slightly well, I don't want to say untraditional, but I never really had a dream school that I wanted to go to.
It's a real same.
And yeah, I kind of, yeah, I just was at, visited I applied to some schools because the high school that I went to was a college preparatory school. And my mom also really wanted me to apply to colleges.
Mhm.
And Boston University gave me the best financial aid. I heard a lot of people go to school in Boston. I don't know where I heard that from, but
They do,
yeah,
though. I've been surprised.
yes, there's a lot of colleges in Boston.
Mhm.
But that's kind of how I ended up there. I thought I was going to
Mm.
do a dual degree in political science and education, specifically social studies education, and a minor in Spanish. And which, looking back, I'm like, why did you think you had time to do all of that? But eventually, I switched it to a double major in political science and history and a minor in education. And that ended up working out pretty well for
Mm.
me. What about you?
Yeah, during those 4 years, I was lost and separated from you. I was studying psychology at Harvard in Massachusetts as well. I apparently I always used to write about going to Harvard when I was younger. I don't
Okay,
recall
okay.
this, but I've seen like like my teachers have shown me writings like oh, look at this. I'm like, oh, I
Wait,
really
what
don't recall
age?
that. Um, that was like a fifth grade teacher who showed me
Oh,
that.
wow. Okay.
Um,
So this has been a long time coming, even if
yeah, and I had a third
memory does
grade
not.
teacher show me as well. But in my mind, when I got to high school and like was actually doing the college process, I was very against applying to Ivies, and my mom had to force me to visit Harvard on our we did like a road trip this summer after my junior year
Mm,
because I was like, I'm not about to go to these Ivies. People are very snooty. Like the work is going
mhm,
to be insurmountably hard. Like I just don't want to be involved with that.
mhm.
But I
Yeah.
got to Harvard campus and I was like, oh, okay, okay.
Did the
I
brick get
had
you too?
it was my tour guide. I had a really dope tour guide from the Harvard has a program called the Undergraduate Minority Recruitment Program. That's
Mhm.
how they get you black people. That's how they get you because there's not that many of us on campus. But anyhow, I had a really dope tour guide and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to apply, amazing, whatever. So I applied
Mhm.
early, got in. But I still applied to other schools and I didn't decide until like April 28th. You have to decide May 1st. I didn't decide until the last possible moment, quite honestly,
Mhm.
um, to go because I still was like, the aid they gave me wasn't great. I had better aid at other places. Again,
Mhm.
still a little unsure of what life would be like there, but I went.
Yeah.
I studied psychology. I um originally thought I was going to go to med school. So I was on the pre med track.
Yes.
Well, they don't
Yes.
have an official track because they were liberal arts, whatever, whatever. But I was on the track that would set you up to go to medical school. Um, but was it my freshman year?
What
Their
class?
science
Was there a
classes are
class?
hard.
Yeah.
MCB 80. Like to this
Mhm.
day, I cannot tell you what the course was about.
Mhm.
But I'm like, it's not for me. It's not for me. And God knew I was not built for medical school. So I
But
studied psych
you could if you I have absolute faith that if you really wanted to, you would find a way to make it happen. But
in another life.
in
That's what I
another life,
say. In another life,
you don't need
I'm
to do
a
it. Yeah.
psychiatrist. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but I studied psych. I had an a minor in African American studies, and then we call them like language citations. They're not exactly secondaries,
Mhm.
but if you take on another language, almost as a secondary, side of secondary in Spanish, um,
And
or a
is that
language
required?
citation.
Is that required, or is that just something that you can do if you want to and like have
It's just
the
something you
time?
can do, yeah,
Okay.
if you want to. You only have to have a major. So I could have just done psych and been like done with it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but the way that psych works at Harvard and it maybe works this way at a lot of other schools, it's not really clinical based, it's more research focused. And I knew like I
Mm,
wanted to serve patients. So
yeah.
I think getting that African American, African American studies secondary really helped
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's me. That's what I did in those 4 years was
Yeah.
studying, um, trying to avoid becoming an elitist, like trying to
Yeah.
remain sane.
Mm-hmm. Which can
And
happen.
then,
I've seen it happen
yeah,
very quickly for some people who
a
go
hundred
to,
percent,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
But at the end of those 4 years is how we met. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just wondering, how did you go from what you studied to the nonprofit we were at? Like, how
Yeah.
did that happen for you?
Yes. So I entered college after coming from a gap year where I was working in a different educational nonprofit, but it was more in the kind of providing very direct in class student facing support related to
Mm-hmm.
like math and literacy. And so
Mm-hmm.
from that, I left that year really thinking that I wanted to be a teacher. I thought I wanted to work in schools, be in classrooms. And then what happened, I think, when I entered college, I started taking basically all of the requirements for a social studies, um, like social studies education
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think, to be quite honest, the classes themselves, the methodology classes, or the like methods, like teaching methods classes, and then my kind of my placement. It wasn't my practicum because I didn't make it that far, but everyone has to take a class called ED 100, where you are placed on site at a school and you kind of are an observer slash teacher's assistant, kind of. And after those classes, I just kind of, it really did take the zest I guess I had for teaching
Mm-hmm.
out of it. And I also thought more about just the politics of working in a school, which were reaffirmed when I like after working the nonprofit that you and I both worked at. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but from that experience, I did know, okay, well, if I don't want to be a teacher, but I do really like working with students. And I guess back then maybe I was a little bit more on my like volunteering nonprofits are better than corporations,
Yes, I'm so good.
soapbox
I'm
or
so
whatever. Yes,
holy. Yep,
exactly.
yep,
I really
yep.
want to like I want to help make change. Little saviorism, maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I was kind of like, okay. Thinking back, you really thought you were going to do something with 2 years at a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit. But okay. So anyway, I had heard about this organization, I think from actually a career coach at
Okay.
BU. And it sounded really, I was like, oh, that sounds, interesting because I had a slightly non-traditional path to college. So I was like, oh, I think it would be, um, I think it'd be really nice to be able to talk to high school students about how they don't need, basically trying to be like, if you don't want to go to college immediately, you don't have to. And so
Yep.
that's kind of why I ended up applying to this singular thing. And I think something that I tend to do, which maybe is a bit of a problem, and I've noticed this in this most recent job application cycle thing, is I find one job and then I kind of build my entire, like I romanticize it a little bit and build my entire like
Mm,
next few years around it. And I basically on the basis of like, okay, well, when I get this job, I'll do this and I'll do this, and this is what my life will look like. And so I kind of did that with this job. And I mean, it
mm-hmm.
worked, but I think I maybe that kind of contributed to why I only applied to this one job, because I was in my head, I was building it up to be like this really, this really cool thing. And it was just going to fit perfectly. So that's
Yeah.
my long-winded answer. So why did you take me through your thought process, going from like what you studied and everything to applying to one job?
Yeah. So maybe that isn't the whole truth because I applied to I was like, I'm going to be a consultant. I see everyone in my class is
Yep.
doing this consulting thing. Let me do consulting, but let me do it with like a nonprofit consulting agency or an
Oh,
agency that really
bridge
helps
span.
nonprofit.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
That's the one that immediately came to my mind. I definitely
Because
still
it
follow them
is.
on LinkedIn.
Yep. 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 And I went through, I was practicing case studies. Like the math never made sense to me, all like the way
Mm.
I even went to a couple sessions about how to do this quick math. I'm like, I do not know how you got to the answer. So I had a screener interview, went well. I'm a people person, went well.
Yes.
The second interview, girl, I got some numbers wrong. Very
Okay.
wrong. And
Okay. Very wrong.
very wrong because all I remember is a lady being, first of all, I said my answer, complete
Oh,
silence.
that's never good.
And then
That's
she
never good.
goes, um, no, I'm not sure how you got there. Maybe try again. Tried it again, got the same number.
Love
And she
that.
was like, no, that's not it, but that's okay. Here's the number and we can move on. I was like, oh Lord. I obviously I didn't do well. It didn't do well, which is fine. I remember she called me. Let me get back on topic, but let me tell you this tangent. I was walking to, I forget, I was walking to meet some friends. I get this call from her after the screener. I mean, after the
Mm.
second interview. And she's like, we're just chatting. She's like, how your weekend? How's your day going? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, it's going well. It's going well. Hard pause again, these
Oh,
hard
yep.
pauses. And she goes, well, I have some not so great news for you.
Oh, that's
I'm
not.
thinking like, did somebody in my family? This lady don't know me, but I'm thinking, did somebody in my family die?
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
not
This
so
is
great
sounding familiar.
news.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, why would you say that? And then she was basically just like, oh, we decided not to move forward with you. Duh,
At that point,
duh.
like,
But why did you need to phrase it like that? It was not the end of the world.
yeah, we were both
It
there.
wasn't.
We were both there when I said those numbers. So
Literally, I
yeah,
knew that I wasn't getting the job. I
yeah,
knew it didn't go well.
yeah.
But long story short, so after that, I had to quickly regroup. That was probably March of that time, probably in
Mm-hmm.
March. And
Which
so
you
I'm
still
like,
have time. Like at
as
that
you
point,
still, you
yeah,
literally like don't need to even have a job when you graduate, but
yeah.
we're planners. So, we like to plan.
Okay, it's okay.
I also think I went to a career fair or something, and the nonprofit was there. And I really fell in love with the mission of serving students. Wanted to
Mm-hmm.
stay in Boston at that time, so it was a great fit. Was looking into counseling, so it just worked out. And to your point, I tend to focus on one thing at a time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and honestly, after that consulting experience, I was like, where am I going?
Right. Yeah.
Where am I going?
It's like
So I
not trying to do
applied.
that again
I'm
multiple
not doing that
times.
again.
Not
I'm not really
embarrassing
trying to
myself.
work
Yeah.
in corporate. And to your point, like the saviorism of, oh my gosh, well, I'm gonna do this nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's gonna
Yeah.
be great. It happened. It was a good time. It was a
Mm-hmm.
good time. Learned a lot, I would say. Definitely learned a lot. Learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about work relationships and working with
Mm.
other people and what that looks like. I'm very grateful that I had the time, I think, to be in a cohort of other young people who are also
Yeah, I
trying to
will say
figure
that
out,
was nice. Yeah.
yeah, their professional journey. But after 1 year,
She
I
said
had to move
bye.
on. I had to step away. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I stayed for another year.
Yeah, it's not, yeah. I mean, like, I stayed in the school system. I was still a part of the public school system, but just
Yeah.
taking things from a different angle. Looking at
Mm-hmm.
mental health and supporting
Yeah.
students who had extended absences there. But
And making more
those
money.
were, yeah,
Yeah.
and making more money,
Mm-hmm.
significantly more money.
Yes.
Which was it's the, what do they call it, a catch-22, because it's
Mm.
a lot of money for it to come out of school and to make, but then on the other side, and we'll get into this soon, but like doing grad school and then people wanting to like lowball you with these offers. I'm
Yeah.
like, baby,
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
making more than that before I had this second degree. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Take me through what happened from that point up until now, because obviously there were quite a few world events that happened in between that time. So let me know. Yeah. Let me know how you got from that point to right here, us talking.
yeah, yeah. Well, one story that I think
Mhm.
kind of encapsulates all of this is, even after college, I knew that my parents were like, what are you going to do after college? Like, they definitely wanted me to go to grad school.
Mm.
But I knew that wasn't going to happen right away. And so I think
Wait,
that
quick
feeds in.
question. Sorry.
Yep.
What did they have a specific idea of what school they wanted you to go, like type of grad school in mind, or they just wanted you to
No,
pursue grad school?
baby. They wanted me to
Okay.
pursue grad school because both of them had
Yeah.
like gotten their degrees when they were a little bit older.
Mm,
And
okay.
so like older 20s, old, like it's not long older, but
Not
like
slightly different.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
waited.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
their path was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were very much like, go do it, because once you start working, like, you're not going to want to do it.
Which is
Baby, I didn't want to do it before then. So
right. You're like
that
valid
means nothing
advice.
to me.
Right. But yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of pushed it off. I knew it was going to happen
Mm-hmm.
during 2019, I think fall of 2019.
Yes.
I had started applying to grad schools. It was coincidentally one of the worst years of my life. I think I talked about that a little bit at the last episode, but I was like, this Boston thing isn't working for me, and
Mm-hmm.
this like weird career thing I'm doing isn't working for me
Yeah.
either. Not the actual job itself, but like I can't be in education. Like, this space
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
is not
Mm-hmm.
working for me. So I
Yeah.
applied to grad school. Emily and I met up like once a week, once every
Yeah.
other week to
We were really trying to keep each other accountable because I was also applying to grad school. And that is, which we'll probably inevitably do an episode on, but that is a
100%.
very like stressful, a very emotional, that, or at least for me, maybe I should just say, but like I think for
It
both of us
was,
though, it was
yes.
like it was stressful, it was emotional, and like was bringing up just a lot of, I think, other questions around like, again, really large questions of like identity and what we
Mm-hmm.
want to be doing. And basically you're putting all of yourself, to a certain extent, you're putting all of yourself out there and being like, here, am I good enough to get accepted into this program? And it can feel really personal, even if it's not. So yeah, we
Mm.
were, and I'll always credit Kalen with actually being the reason why I submitted my applications, because I came very, very close to not submitting anything. So yes,
Oh my
sorry,
gosh.
continue.
You're good. No, no,
In
no. I
conclusion,
think
it was a stressful time.
it was a stressful time. I think like we're each other's almost like not a reason for being in grad school or having gone through grad school, or in your case still being in it, but like we held, to your point, we held each other accountable, because
Yeah. We're like,
if we
if
were
that's
just
your
out there
purpose, yeah.
chilling, we would not have been there. We
No,
would not have been
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So that was 2019. Y'all know what happened in 2020. So March of 2020, I was still working in the school district. So I headed home for a bit at the beginning of the pandemic. Was still deciding on grad school. Am I going to go back to grad school and be in Boston? I had applied to BU and BC, or am I going to head to University of Michigan?
Mm.
I was at home temporarily anyway, and it just felt like a safer option at the time. We had really no idea what the pandemic was doing.
Yeah. I was
And at that
convinced it'd
time,
be over by July.
exactly, exactly. And so I was like, let me just stay home for a bit, whatever. And that happened. But also at the beginning of the pandemic, one of my mentors, Liz Wiltsey, was running a program talking about like naming your needs and like getting your needs met. And so I joined that program. By far the best thing I did of the whole pandemic, because for me it really set the tone of like the foundation of me saying no, or just like going with the flow, of really trying to build a life I think that I would be proud of, and a life that felt good to me. And so I continued with grad school. I started in August of 2020. I did 2 different internships, again getting my needs met. I did one, so I went to social work. I don't think I said that, a social work programs. So I did one on a more macro scale, working with one of our local officials here. And I also did some psychotherapy with clients. And now I'm here. I was working somewhere else at the beginning of the year. I graduated, in December of 2021. Was working somewhere else at the beginning of this year, again in that education space, which I think both of us, we excel when we're in those spaces.
We can definitely do those jobs.
We can do those jobs, but does it fill our bucket? And a combination of it not filling my bucket, a combination of just company restructures, that I had to look for another job. And I'm at the job I'm at now, just started again like last week. Am loving it so far. But I think that's just to say, and I'm excited to hear more about your story as well, Emily, is so many people are like, the path isn't linear. The path isn't linear. And I would, as a like college student, I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to hear.
Yeah.
But it's
Unhelpful,
so true.
but thank you.
Unhelpful, but thank you. But in hindsight, I'm like, that is so freeing to tell people like, study what you're going to study. And we can get into like the economics of that at a different point, but like study what you're going to study and it'll work out. And like so far for me, it hasn't always felt good in the moment, but like it's worked out. Yeah. How has it worked out for you? Or how like did you get from the nonprofit we were at to being in a PhD program and like doing all the amazing things that you're currently doing?
That, I think what you said at the end is very true. And I think the pandemic especially highlighted that. And that's actually the story. For context, maybe I could have said that in the beginning, but we decided to, like, both of us, we gave each other homework to like come up with a story that really like captured the period of time from when we were working our nonprofit job together to where we are now. And for me, inevitably, the pandemic is a huge part of this. So I remember at the time when I was working at the nonprofit, I would work there like 5 days a week, my full-time job. And then 1 to 2 days a week, I would work at my restaurant job, just because money, just different. I really liked my coworkers. I liked the, just kind of the difference in the 2 jobs that I was doing. But I remember we started to hear a little bit about whisperings of the pandemic and COVID and Corona, and my parents, they're on the West Coast. So I think it kind of hit that coast first a little bit. And then there was like one event in Boston that was like a super spreader. And then it really became the year. But basically, I remember that there was a lot of uncertainty. I had just gone to school that day, and I remember there was like not a lot of kids there. And so everyone was basically talking about, like, at this point, different schools have been shutting down, but because we were BPS, we hadn't, no, the superintendent hadn't made an announcement at that point. But
I
everyone
was at
was,
home though, y'all. I had already flown home, but yes.
um, yeah, so I was still there, and mainly because I had this other job that I had to physically be there for. Um, but I remember I cleaned everything because I had a feeling. I was like, I don't think I'm coming back here. And if I leave, I want to make sure everything's clean and just take the things that I would want with me immediately home. And so
Mhm.
I had all those things. I was at my serving job that Friday night. And I remember getting an email on my phone from the superintendent that said, classes are not, or like basically school's closed until late April. And at this point, it was like mid-May. And so that was, I remember having to go to the back because I didn't like cry or anything. So I was like, okay, well, at that point, I didn't know the severity of everything, obviously. So I was just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay. But I was just very shocked because schools were closing for like a few days to like deep clean the school because we didn't understand what COVID was at the point.
BPS was
Yeah.
doing that, yes, but you notice the colleges around us were like, "Nah, we
You're
cutting
going,
that
yeah,
off."
you're going home.
That's why
Yeah.
I flew home because I was like, "If the college is doing
Yes.
this, I gotta be gone too."
Yes. Yeah. So I remember because everyone's like, oh, yeah, we'll probably close for like a few days. We'll close for a week, maybe 2 weeks max. But this was like, we're closing for over a month. And that was kind of when the first indicator of like, oh, this is more serious than I thought. And
Mm.
I remember talking to my manager and they were like, oh, that's an overreaction. And then that Sunday, it the mayor announced that restaurants were closed too. And so I just feel like that story in those moments, like kind of, I felt like when I was at the restaurant, like my job and like also classes too, but just everything that I'd been working on and doing up until that point, like thankfully applications had already been submitted um back in December and then in like early January. But I just remember going from doing so many things, running around, being like exhausted and not necessarily
Mm.
realizing it because I feel like I was just on a different, I was operating in a very
It was
different.
normal.
Yes, exactly. And going from all of that to literally not having basically anything to quote unquote do. And I just was kind of like, and I just was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I just don't even really know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And I think that to your point, it didn't, like, the decision to do a PhD program. Um, I was originally waitlisted. I don't want to, like, how much detail do I give? Um, I applied to 4 schools, got accepted into one of them, was waitlisted at the program I'm currently in, but then got accepted off the waitlist. And that happened in like April. So this was like things had been closed, people were losing their jobs, and I had funding, and I was enough funding for me to know that rent and my utilities, like the necessities, would be covered. And I remember
Mhm.
in that moment, I thought that, this is like an indicator, like I got off the wait list. Um, and this is kind of like a sign that this is when I'm supposed to be doing this. Um, which sounds maybe a little like spiritual, but and to an extent it
It is
was.
what it is.
But looking back, I'm kind of like, I probably would have benefited from waiting a little bit, but to your point, like things are not linear. Um, you know, the correct path maybe would have been, oh, take a few years, do research at like be a research associate at like a lab or a think tank or at, a university for a professor independently, like something like that, and then see if you like it and then do it,
Mm.
which I
Mhm.
still kind of recommend if that's something you can do. But for me at the time, it very much was just the world was crashing and burning. It's still crashing and burning, but it was crashing and burning. And this program was like kind of a source of stability, not only monetarily, but also just like, hey, you're going to be doing this for the next like 4 to 5 to 6 years. And in a time of uncertainty, it was a very clear, like, you're going to take classes and then you're going to do this and then you're going to do this. Um, and so now that we're not post pandemic by any means, but I think that now that I've had a little bit of experience, and hindsight's 2020, and distance from that, I think inevitably there are things that I kind of like wish went a little bit differently or that I would have done differently. But to your point,
Mm,
I think things have worked out. And in part because we try to make sure they do. We do as much as we can to be like, okay, well, if this is the decision, how do I kind of make the best of it now? So obviously I'm still in my program. I shouldn't say obviously, because actually there's been some people who have withdrawn from my program. So I shouldn't say
mhm.
obviously, but I'm still in my program. I'm finished my coursework and I passed my comprehensive exam.
Ooh, ooh.
Yes, which Kalen again supported me through every single day. Now is a very interesting time for me because I don't have classes anymore unless I want to take more, but I think I'm good for a little bit. But now I have to put together my committee and defend my proposal, like put all of that together, basically figure out what I want to actually do my dissertation on. And I also, what's coming up for me too is like, I'm also working, like I'm working part-time jobs. As I mentioned, I really want to get a full-time job for financial reasons. And also just, I think I have a lot of different interests. For me, I'm someone who really does enjoy doing a lot of different things because it helps provide perspective. At
Same,
least this
same.
is how I see it, because it's like
Yep.
if you're focusing on one thing, yes, you can really get into it, you can get really good at it, but I think that sometimes then it consumes your life in a way that for me can sometimes not be very good. And if
Hmm.
one thing, or like, if things aren't going well in that one aspect of your life, it is very hard to feel as though you can step away from it or that it's not a big deal because you've literally been putting all your energy into it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't care if it takes me longer at this point. Um, because again, funding and also just working, and I don't have
Hmm.
student loans to pay. Um,
Hmm.
so I can make, that's a decision that I can make, and
Yep.
I'm very privileged to be able to make. But that's currently, yeah, currently where I am, just trying to figure out how to put together a committee, put together a proposal, and how to
Literally.
work on top of that and live my life. So
Yeah. I'm super proud of us because I think that we both came from a place in, let's say, 2018 when we first met and we're starting, that we
mhm,
were very much like, go, go, go. We always have to be on top of stuff. Like we always have to do
yeah,
stuff perfectly and we have to do it well. And like we need to be the best at it. Versus now, not that we aren't good at stuff, not that we're not like
mhm,
still producing quality things. Um, I think we've just slowed down in a way where our production isn't necessarily the central
yeah,
component of what we're doing. And we're trying to bring balance, or as you said a couple weeks ago, like harmony to
mhm,
what we're doing and making sure that all facets of our life are getting the
yeah,
attention and the life that um, they need to, because we can't be out here only focusing on academics or only focusing on our careers, knowing that at the end of the day, when I am 80 years old, hope I please
because
only
it's a
let me
toss up. Some days I'm
live.
like, yes, please let me see 80. Other days I'm like, don't let me live that long.
Exactly. But when I
I'm
mature,
older.
when I'm
Yes.
older and mature, that I can like have a balanced life and like not feel run down or tired. And I think especially as women of color, that's
Mhm.
something that is incredibly important. As a Black woman, for
Yeah.
me, with the history of like having ancestors work their body to the bones
Yeah.
and like having had to do that in order to survive,
Yeah.
I try to tap into rest, into like
Mhm.
softness, as much as popular. And I think that's something that's really common right now is like, oh, how can I be soft? Like whatever else.
Mhm.
But I think there's truth in like wanting to slow down and
Yes.
wanting to rest and wanting to introduce some harmony to our lives, because
Yeah.
we've spent so much of it just running a rat race that we didn't intentionally sign up for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think everything you're saying too, as well as the whole feeling uncomfortable, especially when you're making or feeling kind of uncomfortable in the moment when you're making those decisions to, because you literally are, to your point, you are resisting a very, very powerfully strong system of capitalism, which is intertwined with racism and a lot of other isms. And in doing that, those feelings of discomfort and not forcing yourself to kind of like be as productive and work and be the best at everything, like it takes a lot it's actually really hard to do that. To your point, especially
100%.
for you as a Black woman, like that is very, very hard. And I just, I'm also very proud of us. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of um, us just trying to like basically be happy because it's
Literally.
be
Yeah.
happy and live a life where we actually feel some sense of joy, which that's so sad to
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's bleak. It's
It
bleak.
can be bleak. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think having people in your community, having people in your corner who remind you of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
outside of all
Yeah.
of the noise, outside of the capitalist system, um, is super helpful. And I would encourage anyone listening, if you don't have people who love on you for being you, if you don't have people who hold you
Mm-hmm.
accountable, if you don't have people who are cheering you on to be your best self, find those people. They're out
Yeah.
there. They want
Mm-hmm.
to support you. And yes, it is a journey. We
Mm-hmm.
took however many years, not 22 years, to find each other, to
Mm-hmm.
be in this friendship together, but it is worth putting yourself out there for 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And friends who also love and support you the way that you are asking for and then what you need.
Yep.
Because I think sometimes, like, as we like to talk about like love languages and things like that, like, yes, this is why it is kind of important because even if someone is communicating how they demonstrate and show love, if that's not how someone else wants to be receiving it, then like that's great. And again, there can be understanding on both parties sides of like being recognizing that, oh, okay, what you are trying to do is show that you love me by doing something, but that's not how I want to be loved. And so we need to come to some sort of, okay, there's like a compromise or some sort of like, okay, thank you, I
Mm,
appreciate you, this is not me saying that I don't love you or rejecting that. It's just that this is what this is what I need, and then tell me what you want from me, because I know that, I might show my love in forms of like acts of service, but if you need words of affirmation and I'm not saying that, like, you won't feel loved or cared for. So I think that's,
100%.
yeah.
It's okay if you have that conversation with someone
Mhm.
and like you're just not able to align. Like,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
fine too. I think being mature enough to be like, this is not working for me is like
Mhm.
a skill as well.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Very philosophical,
Every
very
inevitably.
inevitably always coming back to why are we here? What are we
Yes.
doing? Like, does it make sense?
Mhm.
And I feel like that will just be a common theme throughout our time together. Again, we're called Please Clarify. Like, we want to know. We
Mhm.
have questions.
Lots of questions, which is a very good segue into our portion. What do you need clarity on? So please, Kalen, tell me, what do you need clarity on this time or this week, this episode?
Yeah, if someone can tell me what the Black expat community is looking like specifically in Mexico City, I
Yes.
would love that. I just need some help around kind of what's happening right now.
For me this week, it's again an ongoing theme, but like respectfully, how much longer does the United States have? Like and when I say the United States, I mean in its like colonial capitalist white Western form, because it is not like it for context, this is the week of June. Basically, Roe v. Wade has been kind of
Yep.
the one of the many things that have been kind of taking over headlines, but that has been the specific one that prompted this thought for me, because inevitably there
Mm,
are other things connected to the implications for Roe v. Wade.
yep.
But yeah, I really would like to know. I would like to know how many years are left here, because, and I don't even really know what the correct answer is, because it's a very inherently like settler colonial thing to just like come, even if neither of us really wanted to be here per se, we did not
No,
ask to be here, um
no.
but
Here,
to
like literally where we are, but also like here on this
here,
earth.
yes, correct. For you as a Black woman, and then also for me as like a transracial adoptee, it's just like we did not ask to be brought here. Systems
Mm-mm.
brought us here. And so
100%.
yeah, I'm really wondering like how much longer? Um, how much longer? Yeah.
How much longer?
Mm-hmm.
How much longer do we have as like a country? But I almost so how much longer do we have as individuals? Let me speak for myself. How much longer do I have to
Correct.
be a part of this journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm gonna have to hop off soon. I really thought January 6th was going to be my time, but I needed to finish up grad school,
Mm-hmm.
like do some stuff there. I'm ready to go. I'm ready
Yes.
to go.
Yeah. And I really feel for Indigenous communities who have been here.
To leave a horrible situation is like very much a privilege.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to be able to leave this country specifically is very much a privilege. Yeah.
Which
And
again,
I think it's okay to hold
sorry.
people accountable on our podcast.
I think so too.
I think it's okay to hold people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way I think that we're going to move forward as a country too. Will I be here? I don't know. But
Yes.
I think the only way that we can move forward is by holding each other accountable, loving on people, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm saying loving on people in your community, but you can also love on people and keep them
Do
accountable. But
you? Yeah,
like
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
people
Mm-hmm.
really need accountability.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Let me stop. Anyway, we thank you so much today for tuning in. It has been a joy, as always, to be able to spend some time with you. A lot of our focus this season is just going to be on you getting to know us getting to know you, and hoping that we can become one of your staple podcasts.
Yes. We'd be honored. And with that, we will
See you when we see you.
bye.
Bye.